we are now in Masechet Shabbat, Perek Aleph, Mishna Dalet, the first chapter, fourth Mishnah. ואלו מן ההלכות שאמרו בעליית חנניה בן חזקיה בן גוריון כשעלו לבקרו. We started talking about that yesterday, about the dispute between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, but to understand the context, why were they there? Why did they go up to his mansion? So he's mentioned in several places, and according to the commentators, that was in a specific case when they went to discuss the future of the book of Yehezkel, the book of Ezekiel in the Tanakh. We know is one of the major prophets. They have Yeshaya, Yirmiyah, Yehezkel are the major prophets, and the other 12 minor prophets. So obviously Yehezkel is part of the Tanakh, but at the time of the Mishnah, there was a debate regarding the future of Yehezkel. Some rabbis wanted to cut Yehezkel out of the Tanakh and to bury the book, so nobody would study it. Why? There were certain things in the book that didn't agree with what is written in the Torah. כגון כל נבלה וטרפה מן העוף ומן הבהמה לא יאכלו הכהנים. He says that the Kohanim are not allowed to eat any terefa, any animal that was not slaughtered in a kosher way, whether it's from the fowl, from chicken or birds or animals. And the rabbis understood that if he says the Kohanim are not allowed to eat from it, that means that the rest of the people are allowed. So finally, Hananiah ben Hizkiah ben Gurion, that man was able to explain all the discrepancies between Yehezkel and the rest of the Torah, and they agreed to accept the book and keep it in the Torah. However, at that occasion, it says, "U'shmona'asar davar gazru bo bayom," and they made 18 decrees on that day. What are the 18 decrees that are not mentioned in the Mishnah? The commentators give us a breakdown of what are the decrees. It's interesting. Rabbi-ovadia and Bartanura, who's the main commentator of the Mishnah that we study today, lists the 18. Out of those 18, 11 or more, actually 14 decrees are related to Tum'ah v'Tahara, to the laws of purity and impurity, which in the time of the Mishnah were not really relevant. That's interesting because the whole idea of Tum'ah v'Tahara, being pure or impure, is only relevant at the time of the temple. After the destruction of the temple, the whole system didn't apply because one needed to be pure in order to be able to enter the temple. So we don't know, when we read Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai, they could have lived before or after the destruction. But a lot of what happened before the destruction and even after is that many people within Am Yisrael, within the Jewish people, took upon themselves to keep the laws of purity as if the temple is still around, because they refused to accept the fact that the temple is destroyed, so they kept on going with these laws. So interesting how much space those halachot occupy within the discussion. If we have 18 decrees that they made that day, and out of these 14 have to do with purity and impurity, and that's not really a main concern of the Torah. The Torah just says if before you come to the temple you have to be pure, but the Torah doesn't require people to be pure outside the temple. There's no such requirement, but that's their obsession. That's what they're focused on, and it was so important for them that they went to war for it. Remember, and some students of Bet Hillel, disciples were killed because of that.
But also a lot of the laws are clarified based on the laws of purity. There are a lot of laws that are discussed that are nothing to do with purity, but based on how you decide one or another with purity.
Yeah, but that's a tenuous relationship. That's just a more, I would say more is abstract in the Gemara, that they try to derive halachot to infer them from the way we treat the laws of purity and impurity. But in reality, when you ask the questions like how much the Torah is concerned about purity and impurity, the Torah is concerned about that, but only within the confinements of the temple, not outside the temple. Outside the temple, it's only when it comes to sexual contact or sexually transmitted diseases. However, that was we see it even today, within because that's part of the religious practice. Part of being religious is sort of enhancing our OCD behavior, or obsessive compulsive behavior. So even today, you see a lot of the halachot that have to do with preparing yourself for prayer, getting up in the morning, eating, is washing your hands, and how you wash your hands, how you dry them, and how you do things that are related to purity and impurity, even though, as I said, not relevant. How many humrot were added, many sort of strict laws regarding the separation of a man and a woman during Nidah, also have to do with that kind of obsession with the idea of purity and cleanliness. However, those decrees are not specified in the Mishnah. There are about 14 that are mentioned. Only 3 of them are mentioned in the Mishnah, and we'll read them. It's about what we already saw yesterday, using candlelight on Shabbat, that one cannot do activities next to the candles for fear that he will tilt the candle to feed the wick. And another one is is the halakha at the end of the chapter of someone who's traveling and he cannot make it to the city before sundown, before Shabbat starts. So he is allowed to give his wallet or bags to a non-Jewish friend so he could take it into the city. Rambam, Maimonides, takes it to a larger scale based on the discussion in the Gemara. In the Talmud Bavli, the Gemara says something interesting. The Mishnah says that they made 18 decrees. ואלו מן ההלכות שאמרו, ו18 דברים גזרו בו ביום. I'll read again the Mishnah. These are the halachot, these are the laws that were said at the house of Hananiah. And they voted, and Bet Shammai voted, and they were the majority, and they made 18 decrees. So the way we read the Mishnah, it's one narrative, right? That the halachot that we read in the Mishnah are part of the 18 things that were voted on, and they were the decrees. So how many halachot in total were discussed? 18. But the Gemara breaks it down. That's part of the way the Gemara, the way the Talmud, which is the commentary of the Mishnah, breaks the Mishnah. It sees each unit as a separate one. So the Talmud says this: Elu min halachot she'amru. Some halachot they said and everybody agreed on, and there was no discussion. And there were 18. V'nimnu v'rabu Bet Shammai al Bet Hillel. And in addition, there was a vote on 18 things that Bet Hillel did not agree with Bet Shammai, and they voted and forced their opinion on them. And 18 dvarim gazru bo bayom, and in addition, they made 18 decrees. So altogether, it's 54 items, which are mentioned in Maimonides. And that is, it's pretty amazing to think that the Mishnah, was first in oral tradition, will tell you that they made 18 decrees, and then you will, from this, have to infer that they made full 54 statements, and they are not written anywhere. So that's just an example of how the Talmud sometimes forces a certain interpretation in the Mishnah that is not there. And now we have to make research and see where did the Talmud where did he take it from, but that's not the form. We're not going to do it now. Now, the next halachot in the chapter speak about, and that is something that is very relevant to today's life, and that is beginning a certain work or certain action before Shabbat and letting it continue into Shabbat. Except for cooking. We're not talking about cooking now. We're just talking about other activities. So Bet Shammai אומרים, אין שורים דיו וסממנים וחרשינים, אלא כדי שישור מבעוד יום, ויתראה מתירים. In order to dye wool, they used to soak the herbs or grains, ingredients, in water to soften them, and then they would release the dye into the water. And it's a long process. So Bet Shammai, the disciples of Shammai say, this must be done in a way that the majority of the work will be done before Shabbat. So what do you care? It's already in the water, right? You're not doing anything. You put it in the water, and it keeps releasing dye into the water. But Shammai and his disciples said, Adam metzuveh al shvitat kelim b'Shabbat. Not only you have to rest, not only your animals have to rest, even your utensils and your possessions have to rest. Even the inanimate objects have to rest. But Bet Hillel say no. You're sorry. That is only anything that goes on by itself is not a problem, and it's also a question of visibility, because even according to the disciples of Shammai, there's no way that you could completely bring to a halt the work of all your possessions on Shabbat. Certain things, even back then, there would be things. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to the field and freeze all your fruits so they will keep not growing on Shabbat. They will do it anyway, right? Today it's even more complicated, because even if you have a business, you close it, very good, but you have investments that the bank is handling it, and globally, in different time zones. There are internet based companies that keep on providing services on Shabbat, even though some people try to shut them before Shabbat. The question is it okay? Is it not okay? It's done automatically. If you really want to not make sure that your internet business does not operate on Shabbat, you have to follow all time zones. So it has to be shut down from the time Shabbat starts, in Australia, to the time it ends on the other side of the world. So that would be like 36 hours of a non-operation. However, the halacha is like Bet Hillel, that if you start something before Shabbat, it could go on during Shabbat. Another example here is putting the flax, the linen flax, from which you make linen, in the oven. They had to boil it to remove humidity, and putting the wool into a cauldron with dye in order for it to absorb the dye. They also say that you cannot place nets and traps for animals unless there's a good chance they will be trapped beforehand, before the day starts. And one commentator says that even that it means that the trap could only trap one animal. Otherwise, if it trap more, then it will continue into Shabbat. And that is really difficult to say. That you have only because the one animal trap is usually one that hurts the animal, like a snap that snaps on the foot, and that will break a bone. And that according to the later Mishna, the other Masachtot, Masachet Hulin, which speak about the laws of Terefa, that will make the animal non-kosher. So the question is, do we have a certain period in the time of the Mishnah where hunting was still allowed and was not considered making the behemah not kosher? If you look at, I'm saying it's a side comment. In the Torah, it's still valid. The Torah says in Sefer Vayikra, "Ish mibnei Yisrael asher yatzu detzet hayav ha'of velo yeve'enu al petach oel moed." If one hunts an animal or a bird and doesn't bring it to oel moed as a sacrifice, it's a problem. So this is just a question. When you look at the text of the Torah, what does the Torah mean? How can you hunt an animal without wounding it and without causing it to be terefa? There's another discussion. They also say that one cannot sell anything to a non-Jew or to help him carry his burden, unless you know that he will make it to his destination before Shabbat. So they say not only a Jew must rest on Shabbat, even a non-Jew must rest when the action was started by a Jew. Later on, that developed into the question of using the mail service, and it's not a new thing, because already at the time of the Mishnah there was postal service. The Romans had their own postal service, but the champions of that service were the Persians. The Persians invented it and perfected it. They're like we see in Megillat Esther, Ashteranim b'nei Aramachim. They had like the Pony Express, where horses would go to one station and then get to the next station. So the Gemara discusses that are you allowed to put to send something before Shabbat, and you know that it will be delivered on Shabbat? They already had this problem. Can you order from Amazon a minute before Shabbat, and then you have same-day delivery? In LA and other places, you have 1 hour delivery. They know not drones yet, but they will bring it to your door within an hour. So can you do it before Shabbat? Is it a problem or not? Apparently not. It's not a problem, because they say it's mutar. But the Gemara, by the way, says that if there is Beit Do'ar, if there's a place where like postal center in the city, it's okay, because it's it will go there, and anyway they're handling other mail. So I'm saying that because in Hebrew the word for post office is Do'ar, so that word is already mentioned in the Talmud, and the man who delivers the mail in the Talmud is also called Davar. It's not a new word, Davar. We know where it comes from Arabic and Aramaic. Bidawar or Dwera is to go in circles. In Hebrew also, the word dur means a circle. Dor le dor.
Davar with a vav.
Davar with vav, yeah. Dawar it should be. So the dawar is the one who goes in circles and around all. Anyway, it's interesting. בית שמאי אומרים, אין נותנים עורות לעבדן, ולא כלים לחובס נוחי, אלא כדי שיעשו מבעוד יום, ובכולה ביתרים מתירים עם השמש. According to Mishna, one cannot give the hides to the tanner or garments to wash unless there's enough time to do it before Shabbat. And let's say it's okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who was from the family of Hillel, and Hillel said it's okay to do it, says, in my family we would give our fine linen to the washer 3 days before Shabbat, because it takes time to clean them well. So we do it 3 days before Shabbat. So he sort of brags that they were stricter than what the halakha required, but this is not the halakha. How does it apply today? Something like that of giving someone to a non-Jew to do work on it during Shabbat. It's like if you drop clothes at the laundromat, right? At the or a car at a body shop. Could you give your car for someone to fix it before Shabbat, and you tell them I need it immediately after Shabbat? So, according to the Mishnah, there's no problem, because you're not doing anything. You're giving that work. You can decide when to do it. However, there is
a difference whether he's Jewish or not?
No, we're talking about non-Jewish. Non-Jewish. Non-Jewish.
Right.
Jewish is different.
Yeah.
But then we have to, when we go to halakha, we'll do that. Shavin elu va'elu sheto'anin korot bet abad ve'igulei agat. But all of them agree that you're allowed to press the olives and wine before Shabbat. Meaning, if you put what's called korot bet abad, they used to have heavy stones, or in the case of olives, they also had very heavy baskets, woven baskets like ropes that they would put on top of the olives, and then press it with a heavy beam and stones to keep on pressing. This is what they today called cold press, kvisha kara. Not ongoing pressure, but slowly letting the oil.
Cold press. There's cold press, which means that they don't warm it to they don't warm it up to take out the juice, but it's actually cold press, and it's a softer.
Right, it's softer treatment. It's gradual, and they let the oil drip. So the commentators struggle with it. Why do they agree that it's okay to do it before Shabbat? Because apparently squeezing oil and wine from the grapes and the olives on Shabbat is forbidden. So if they think that any melacha which is forbidden on Shabbat you cannot start before Shabbat, that would be the same thing. So the answer is that we're talking about a situation where they already cracked them or started breaking them and extracting juice before Shabbat. So it's a continuation, but it doesn't really answer the question, because Bet Shammai said clearly that anything, the majority of the work has to be done before Shabbat. It seems more reasonable, like when we discussed the list of the works, that at that time this was not still considered a biblical prohibition to extract juice or wine or oil, and later on it was done as part of the Mishnah, because the Mishnah, if you look at the Mishnah in chapter 7, Mishnah 2, there's no melacha, there's no work that could be labeled juice extraction. like shita of today. And later on in the Talmud, some people say that it's derived from threshing, from disha, separating the wheat from the chaff. Some say it has to do with laundry, because when you wash, you have to squeeze. So it's like a byproduct. And actually, there is a statement in the Tosefta, in an external Mishnah, that says, Sohet Adam eshkol anavim v'omer alav kiddush hayom. One can squeeze a cluster of grapes and say the kiddush. And there was a lot of discussion later on about this statement. How can you do it? You can't squeeze on Shabbat juice. And then they said, no, it means that he squeezes it before Shabbat. And the whole idea was that you could use grape juice and you don't need wine. But bottom line, this is what it says. You could squeeze on Shabbat. So that, I think, is the source of halacha. When Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel said that, people still held, both of them, that technically squeezing juice out of olives or grapes is not a problem. It's not harvesting, because those fruits were already harvested. But still, you wouldn't do it on Shabbat, because it's not fitting to the spirit of Shabbat to do commercial activities. But if you do it before Shabbat, that would be okay. Finally, let's Mishnah. I want to conclude with that. They say that if you put anything in the oven before Shabbat, it has to be fully baked. That is something that we'll have to go back to when we study the third chapter, because the third chapter, because that's the chapter that speaks about cooking on Shabbat. So we'll conclude here, and B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow we'll do Perek Bet, which is the one we read every Friday by Madlikin.